Working for you. I am Les Roy Williams. Thank you very much for joining us on this very hot, this very sunny day. Of course, your company is well appreciated from week to week. Today we are going to be having a discussion, and we have had many discussions on this, the ban on single-use plastics. And I have with me officials from the Ministry of Environment, and I have someone from the Ministry of Tourism. I have in studio with me the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Environment, Ms. Sharon Rattan. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you.
I also have with me from the Ministry of Environment, she is the Biosafety Officer, Vincia Woods. Vincia, welcome.
Thank you.
Additionally, I have Mr. Kenny Manning, who is of the Sustainable Destination Council, the Ministry of Tourism. Usually I would have Mrs. Dianelle Taylor Williams here, but I suppose that you're a very good envoy.
Journalist.
Right. Okay. The world population is living, working, vacationing, increasingly conglomerating along the coast, and standing on the front row of the greatest, most unprecedented plastic waste tide ever faced. Washed out on our coast in obvious and clearly visible form, the plastic pollution spectacle blatantly unveiling on our beaches is only the prelude of the greatest story that unfolded further away in the world's oceans, yet mostly originating from where we stand, the land. For more than 50 years, global production and consumption of plastics have continued to rise. In 2019, the production of plastics totaled around 368 million metric tons worldwide. The incredible versatility of this group of materials accounts for the continued growth in production year after year. 8 million metric tons of plastic enter the world's ocean every year. That's like dumping a garbage truck full of plastics into the ocean every minute. If things don't change, experts predict that by 2050, the oceans could have more plastic than fish. Plastics are used in a wide variety of products and have displaced other materials that were previously used for the applications that plastics now dominate, such as wood, metal, and glass. It can be formed into polyesters for use in fabrics and textiles, polyvinylidene chloride for food packaging, and polycarbonates for eyeglasses and compact discs, and in this time of COVID-19 for personal protective equipment, what we call PPP. PPE, among thousands of other uses. China's plastic production stands out among world regions. China is one of the largest producers of plastics in the world, accounting for more than 1/4 of the global production. Of the global production of plastics, reaching 368 million metric tons in 2019, 57.9 million metric tons of that amount were produced in Europe alone. From 1.5 million metric tons of plastic products produced in 1950 to 368 million metric tons in 2019, the world is suffocating from plastic. Something has to be drastically done.
Yeah.
P.S. Rattan?
Indeed.
Something has to be drastically done. Let's start with that. We have had a lot of talk. Several times people have come on this show from the Ministry of Tourism, the Ministry of Environment also has appeared on this show. And there's a lot of talk about the ban of single-use plastics and the reasons given why we should have a ban. Several countries have already had legislation put in place for that ban. We have to move from talk to policy.
Action.
Where are we in terms of that? An action.
Action. At this time, I'll begin because this has been spotlighted as a key priority. And I am glad that you gave that background because that background really reinforces the need to change. However, whilst we have that information and you have said there is talk, yes, there is talk, but because it affects a change of behavior, because in the data you also outlined, you gave a sense of how easy it is for plastic to be used with the production numbers, and it is cheaper. So very often, not very often, most of the times, many instances, it influences our choice of what we use in terms of materials, foods, packaging, and that sort of thing. So that is one of the key things, and that is why we need to talk, because it affects behavior, and this is not a behavior change that we would expect overnight. So the talk is very important, and one of the things that the ministry is endeavoring to do in 2021 is to make sure we have meaningful collaboration so that we can make informed decisions, because we are quite aware that such a ban cannot be done overnight, and we are now advocating a phased implementation ban. However, we need to hear from persons because it's easily accessible. We have to look at what are the alternatives, and we have to engage lots of persons in terms of where are we going to get these alternatives? Are they readily available? Because one main issue we already know is that the duties on the alternative is much higher, which would take up the cost of production for businesses. So this is why we have to have the talk, but we want meaningful talk to make meaningful decisions. And this is why I'm accompanied here by Ms. Vicia Woods, who would enlighten us, share with us how we are going to go about it. And with Mr. Manning,
Yes.
from the Sustainable Destination Council, they have been making efforts to do some work in this area. And also we know in looking at our tourism product, we have to be wholesome with it. And an eco-friendly tourism product would also attract persons to our federation. So Ms. Woods can give us some more information on this talk. that we
Right.
need to engage.
Has any, before I go to Ms. Woods, has any submission been made to Cabinet? Has any paper on the issue been submitted to Cabinet from the ministry?
Yes, prior to me coming to the ministry, there was a submission. It was approved, so we have the blessings of Cabinet. So we are now taking the first steps in the broad, intense consultations. And based on what we find there, we would make some recommendations to Cabinet once again, based on our findings.
I am happy that you are coming. Subsequently to last week, I had on my program officials from the Consumer Affairs Department.
Yes.
And the engagement basically has to do with consumers,
Yes.
because they're the ones who are doing the buying and even those who are doing the selling, because we are all consumers. And we buy, every time we buy, we are provided with plastic. So much plastic. I often use the example of when I go to the shop and I buy bread. And the bread is already in plastic. And then they put it in double plastic.
Yes.
And then I have all these plastics at home. I don't reuse them. And when I go to the supermarket, I accumulate more plastic. So there's a lot of plastic that is choking me in my own home. And then when I do get rid of the plastic, they end up where they should not end up. So that engagement has to do with consumers.
Yes.
And as you correctly said, it's going to take some time because I'm so accustomed to my plastic
Exactly.
that it has become a plastic culture that we're in, and changing culture, as you said, has to be done in a phased approach.
Yes.
It does not happen overnight. So, Ms. Woods, what can you tell us? The plastic is with us. It has been with us for a very long time. And the dangers of plastic. You deal with biosafety. You're the biosafety officer. What are some of the dangers of plastic in terms of the dangers not only to human beings, but the dangers to the environment?
Okay, good afternoon again, Mr. Williams. Some persons may want to know why it is we have chosen to ban plastics. So let me just first outline the dangers of plastics. As you mentioned, they're a danger to human health and the environment. Okay, so when we say they're a danger to the environment is because when these plastics, most of the times they are improperly disposed of. Okay, when these plastics, because they don't break down immediately, they break apart into smaller pieces, and these smaller pieces are known as microplastics. When these microplastics make their way into the oceans, into the lakes, they become a part of our food chain because the marine life consume these tiny pieces of plastics. So in turn, when we eat these marine species, we in turn consume not only the species, but we consume the plastics and the toxins that they hold. So that is just one instance in how dangerous they are to the environment. Plastics also have been found in the blood and the tissues of human beings. Okay, because the the toxins leach out into the plastics, and then they can become a part of us. And these plastics in our system has been linked to various ailments. For instance, styrene, which is a material that is used to make styrofoam, it has been labeled as a possible carcinogen from the World Health Organization. And what that simply means is that it's a cancer-causing material. And because we use styrofoam so often in our daily lives, each time we buy food, we take them in the styrofoam containers, and as these containers heat up, they release toxins. So we consume these as well. So these are just a few of the reasons why we have chosen to ban plastics, and primarily because they are so dangerous not only to the environment but also to human health.
Right. I often wonder, because we get food in styrofoam containers, and we have food as well in plastic containers. Some of it we buy it is microwavable in plastic. And some people have said that you spoke about when they heat up and they release certain toxins and chemicals and that sort of a thing. If that contributes to cancer, if you put them in the microwave, for example, the styrofoam, you heat food in styrofoam and you heat food in plastic. What do you say to that?
Yes, although some plastics may be labeled as microwavable, the fact is when they go into the microwave, they do release toxins, and it's even when they're in the environment. Okay, even in the landfills, when these plastics they get into the environment, and they come in contact with all the environmental elements, the rain, the sun, all the other elements, then they also to release plastic. So it doesn't take a high heat for the toxins to be released. Only a moderate heat could be able to release these toxins. So this also is a dangerous part of it.
Right. I have seen a video with a turtle, and the turtle is suffocating because it's ingesting plastic. Sometimes the marine life, they may take it for food.
Correct.
Yes. And they swallow it. And can you imagine the harm that it is doing to marine life? I've seen also where people have cut open fish and found within the fish that there are plastics.
Correct.
Right, and so therefore we consume
Food.
the food, we are affected, but the marine life is also affected.
Just
And-
to interject there, and that world population you spoke about, therein lies the pressure, because you have more people to feed, more ways in which you get food, which may also harm us. And so there's pressure on the systems, marine life, environment, to feed the world.
Yes. And when we have the ocean that is being so polluted by plastic, then we are not only harming ourselves, we are harming the ocean, we are harming the marine life and those of us who depend upon it, and so on. So what can be done in terms of the proper disposal of plastic? Because we don't have yet in place any sort of legislation with ban on single-use plastics. So at this time, what can be done in terms of how people properly dispose of plastics? What can the supermarkets do in the meantime, and other businesses do to reduce, the amount of plastics that we actually accumulate?
Well, in a case like that, education is very important. It is very important because we need to encourage persons to properly dispose of these plastics. Let me just take you into perspective. Annually, the Department of Environment hosts an annual coastal cleanup. And we have seen firsthand how improper disposal of these plastics have done to the environment. And if I may, let me just give you some figures as to how many plastics are found. So this information refers to both St. Kitts and Nevis. For the top 3 items found, you have plastic pieces. So in a space of 2 hours, which is our annual coastal cleanup, we found over 1,341
Yes.
bottles. In Nevis, it's over 2,285 bottles. And that was just one day in the entire year, and not even all the beaches in St. Kitts and Nevis. So as we do from all the time, we need to continue to encourage persons to properly dispose of plastics, to use the garbage bins. And all these factors can contribute to less litter in the environment, less plastics especially in the environment, because this is where the problem comes from. When people litter and not use the bins, not use them as they should. So this is the problem that is mostly contributing to all the plastics in the environment.
Right, and even though the plastics are disposed of at the landfill, it still creates a problem.
It still creates a problem because when plastics are buried in the landfill, they create a heat, and the base of plastics is petroleum, basically. So this can contribute to the fires,
Combustion.
the fires in the landfill as well. So it's not necessary. It doesn't necessarily mean that because they end up in the landfill that's where they're supposed to be, because it really shouldn't be. But at this point, that is our only option right now.
Can plastic be recycled?
Sure, plastics can be recycled. Yes.
But we do not have any sort of recycling plant here.
No.
And our plastic is not being recycled.
No, it's not.
But I can add something to that. There are plans that perhaps in the next 2 to 3 months, we are undertaking a project to introduce some recycling. And I'm also aware that solid waste will be doing something similar. So we have been in touch with our partners because we don't want to duplicate.
Yes.
We want to complement each other. And that coincides very well with our plans for phased ban, because even though we may ban, what do we do with the plastics? And I think there are some businesses, we have 1 or 2 businesses here.
Yes.
I think Mr. Manning could provide some more information on
Yes.
that.
Not the businesses. Well, the biggest one that I know of Adam was Enterprises. They more or less collect bottles and plastic other materials at the area and then put in a container and try to ship them overseas. I know there's also some initiatives being done in Nevis from some students and teachers that actually collect plastic Nevis and send it down to animals. But it's a slow process. So, as I said, hoping in time we'll get a more efficient system going.
Yes.
You know, we are a country that, at this present time, our main income earner is that of tourism. And we have our beaches. Unsightly beaches, of course, are not an attraction for tourists. They should not be attractions for anybody at all, whether they're local, nationals, or tourists. And people go to the beaches and they leave their garbage on the beach. Apart from it being nastiness, they probably do not recognize the harm that they are doing. They're harming themselves without even knowing it. Because plastic is light, and all it takes is the wind. The wind blows it, it ends up in the ocean.
Yes.
And for me who go to swim in the ocean as well, it's affecting me. So what more can we do in terms of education to help people to understand? I know we've been doing things. How can you get that across to the businesses? How can you get that across to various organizations? How can you get that into the schools? And so on. In terms of the dangers of plastics.
Well, that
Single use.
single-use plastics. Well, one of the things, well, as you may be aware, because you said my boss has been here a few times. We have plastic free July going for a number of years now. We try to raise awareness, trying to get people dangers, how they can better utilize plastics and use the consumption of them. We are also encourage people to use the reusable bags.
Yes.
A number of institutions, I think, has adopted that policy where they sell reusable bags are available. Unfortunately, the complete house is. I have a bag, but it's in a car. It's at home. So that's where we are now in terms of we need to go on, perhaps go beyond just education.
Yes.
We have to implement something to, I don't want to say force, but encourage people to use what's already available and to learn what's out there. In fact, that's part of the reason I'm here. Even though I'm here and the Ministry of Tourism,
Yes.
I'm representing STC as a whole. STC is Sustainable Destination Council. It's advised by the Ministry of Tourism, but it's much more than that.
Yes.
In fact, it tries to bring different ministries, departments, business together to collaborate on such initiatives as banning a plastic bag, promoting cultural change, or I should say not cultural change, but perhaps we embracing our farmer culture. That's one of the things we're trying to do. So we try to raise awareness and try to. One of our partners is also Envision Environment, which is why we're trying to deepen our relationship further
Yes.
how it is by working to them a Plastic Be Gone campaign, which now coincides with their 5-year plan on
Yes.
banning plastics. So that's where we are. We've been doing some of the stuff we've been doing before. You can have plastics, we can have panel discussions, beach cleanups, and along that lines. But we want to take a step further by collaborating with the environment, by gathering the data and be able to present it in a more tangible format to people, a more, what should I say? Connecting, yes. So that they will be more receptive to it, and we also want to touch base with those persons who are not just consumers, but decision makers. Because I mean, let's be honest, the consumers will do what's most easy for them. I mean, as I said, they might not be aware of the consequences. So somebody takes the persons who actually have the say to say, "Look, we understand what you're going through, which makes trying to make it easy, but at the end of the day, it's going to cost us, you, me, everyone, more in the long run. So these steps have to be taken. Of course, that's going to be done in a phase process, as I said. We can't just decide, go to a business place and say, you stop using plastic bags today. Of course, the reaction will be, so what about my customers? How are they going to react? You have not given enough time for them to find alternatives, to be accustomed to the alternatives. So that's where we are right now.
And to work the math on their
Yes.
cost of production,
Yes.
Yeah.
their cost of operating. You know, that's very important because we can't just force that decision
course.
down their throats. That's why we have to have the discussion about alternatives. We also have to make a case with the Ministry of Finance
Yes.
because one of the sore points is the high duty on the alternatives.
Yes.
But there are some businesses that should be commended. Ital Creations, we know. I know Coconut Grove. Help me out if you know any more. Rams, Odi Brisbane. They are bringing them.
That's what it's been
They are bringing them in.
support as well.
But like Ital Creations, they know it's expensive, but they have made the push
Yes.
to use that, and they even have some. They have an initiative. You could bring your container to get your food, whether it's a usable plastic or a calabash. I think they make calabashes and sell them,
Yes.
and they're promoting, eating your food out the calabash, and they have the coconut spoon and the coconut fork. I had to say when the gentleman presented, because we had our first focus group consultation on
Yes.
Friday the 16th. And when he presented, my mind went back to my child days, but then it was the Rastas doing that at the time, eating out the calabash and eating with the little calabash made implements. So but it takes quite a change in behavior because I have to tell you that I know it all the time and I've had some of the bags before, but being at the ministry now, I said I'm making an effort. Man, I have the bag in my car, jump out the car, left the bag in the car. And I beat up on myself, but recently I've been doing better. And remembering to take the bag out of the car. Because sometimes you use it, but you take it inside and you forget to bring it in the back to the car. So maybe you need two now. 2 in the car, 1 in the house, etc. I don't know, but it really takes an effort because we are creatures of habit.
Yes.
We have easy access to plastics. So it really, and this is why we understand, we have to look at creative ways to appeal to our consumers.
Yeah, and because it has become, as I mentioned before, a plastic culture. It's you said creatures of habit. And habit is something that takes time to change.
Yes, it does.
But it can change with the right education and with the right attitude, and of course with the proper action. Those things basically can change. Now, Miss Woods, the marine debris is a problem because it is global transboundary. Explain that for me.
Well, basically, the ocean is just one large mass. Although there are various oceans, there's actually there's no stopping to where something can drift to or float to. So, in fact, our trash that we see in our oceans may not even be our own. Okay, and referring back to one of the coastal cleanups, there was a time when we had a passage of storm and we were not able to host the cleanup on the day we usually do. And when we did eventually get to do the cleanup, the beaches were basically clean. And that is not because someone went ahead and cleaned them. That is basically because the ocean came up and took all the trash. So there's no knowing where the trash went. And when we get trash washed up on our shores as well, we have no idea where it came from and where it's going. So this is why we need to be mindful of properly disposing. We need to be mindful of the trash, the items we use. If they are single use, we had a slogan some time ago: if you can't reuse it, refuse it. Okay, and this is just to encourage people to not use single-use plastics. If you can refuse it. You can refuse a straw. You can refuse a shopping bag or something like that. So this is just basically what we are trying to do.
And that whole issue that the ocean is one, large mass, as you said, and the garbage that I dispose of improperly here in St. Kitts and Nevis, that garbage can end up in Timbuktu, somewhere over in Africa, somewhere over in Australia, because it's moving. The water is taking it, it's drifting. And somebody's garbage in Australia, New Zealand, all the way there, can end up in St. Kitts and Nevis. And that is why it has to be a global effort. It has to be a global effort. You know, but of course, you mentioned it, P.S., that plastic is cheap. And plastic has replaced so many other things. It has replaced wood. It has replaced metal. It has replaced glass.
You know, I have a question as soon as you said that. When I was growing up, when we had to buy bread, we had a cloth bag. Who remembers those days?
I remember.
Yeah, we had a cloth bag. There was we called it the bread bag.
And you would go to you would go to the shop with the cloth bag.
With the cloth bag to bring back the bread. So these are things we have to go back to the basics. It's basically and go back to what you were doing before.
Right. But sometimes it is so hard to return after you would have developed the habit over so many years.
Yes.
But nonetheless, you mentioned, Kenny,
Yes.
The whole word sustainability.
Yes.
Sustainable. Can you explain? Because in terms of the ban on single-use plastics and so on, we are talking sustainability. What do you mean by that?
Well, sustainability, more or less, is something that can be maintained over a long period of time. I said we are a sustainable destination council. We want to make sure our destination is sustainable. One of the 3 P's of sustainability we try to live by: people, planet, profit. As my ambassador said, prosperity should be the last P. Where we put people, I said that's the culture, the awareness, the behavior, the culture of us. The planet, environment. Because another thing people feel to is that environment is not just the plants and the trees, it's our built environment, the physical area that we develop, the area that we live in. And of course, prosperity calls me at the end of the day, if money talks, and so we have to look at those areas to find to strike a balance.
Yeah.
So that's what we truly aiming for sustainability. We can't have one without the other. We need progress. We need to ensure that our environment is healthy.
Yes.
And it's, I said, and our motto at this season, good for us, better for all. One of the things I want to stress today is that I don't want people to walk away with the idea that STC is for the tourists. It's not. It's not completely for the tourists. It's good for us, better for all. If we have a healthy, stable environment, it helps us benefit all of us in terms of what our health, our livelihood, which greatly depends on tourism. So it's good for us, better for all. It's not just we're trying to make things all nice and polished for the guests. I said right now, local tourism is a big thing right now. So it's basically us. So that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah. So it's about our health.
Yes.
It's about our livelihood.
Yes.
It's about our lives.
Yes. And our future, the children.
It's about the aesthetics of it's about the environment and all of that. But you know, I'm going to ask a very simple question, Miss Woods. What is plastic? You know, we use a lot of plastic and so on, and it may seem like a very simple question. What is plastic? And what are the ingredients in plastic? How is it made? What is in it?
Okay, well, as mentioned before, plastic is basically it's a cheap product. It is readily available. It has replaced so many different items, and like I said, also the base of plastic is petroleum. So plastic is just basically a product that is used to make our lives a lot easier, if you may. So this is why we have become so dependent on plastics and on single-use plastics. Okay, but however, these materials that are made of plastic have been come to be known to be very harmful and detrimental, if you may, to not only to ourselves but also to the environment. So although they're cheap and they're readily available and they come in handy almost every day of our lives, they also pose a harm to us.
Yes, and I suppose I'm not talking to a scientist, but if I was asking a scientist what is plastic, they will give me all the breakdown in terms of the various chemicals and so on,
course,
the toxins, and what actually goes into making that plastic. You know, I think I mentioned some of them in my opening thing and so on, polypropylene and all of that
A
sort.
lot of polyvis and
A lot of poly this and that, you know, and we're not scientists on this program, but some of the words I can't even call.
But perhaps, Les Roy, we may have to engage the public in those words and let them know these are the kinds of toxins that are making the plastic, so it could impact them.
Yes.
You know, it give them a level of awareness that, you know, this
Yeah.
is what we're consuming.
The chemicals. And you know what? We have increased in terms of plastic in our society with water. We're now buying a lot of water. You know, see the thing, our culture has so shifted that we become the people of the bottled water now.
I like that. You tend to drink more water if it's in a bottle.
In a bottle, we become the people of the bottled water. I remember that, you know, a few weeks ago I had the director of public works, who is a hydrogeologist, Mr. Cromwell Williams, and I asked him, you know, why has there been this increase in people buying bottled water? You know? And he said to me, well, it's a fad.
Yeah, good marketing.
Because our water is safe for drinking. So if our water is safe for drinking, maybe there's a perception out there that our water is not safe for drinking. Why people are buying up all of this water?
I'm guilty. But you know, when I went to Sandy Point to teach many moons ago, they told me there's a difference between the Bastia water and the water in the country. You know, our water in Bastia has chlorine. And we have the best tasting water. Yes, and there's that percent. It still exists today. They'll tell you, marijuana water from Bastia, it has a lot of chlorine.
Right. But my point is with the increase in the consumption of bottled water has come the increase of more plastics, in our society.
Yes.
Yes.
A lot more plastics. And not only that, even when we're speaking about water, plastic gets into our water sources
Yes.
for drinking water and so on. And what is that basically doing?
Same thing. Toxins back in our system.
Miss Woods?
Yes, as Ify said, it brings toxins back into our system as well. We also encourage at the department to, instead of buying your single water, you buy water, try and use a reusable container. You know, but some of the complaints we've gotten are that, oh, I don't want to lug around with a container all the time. But I mean, these little steps can turn into great efforts in what we're trying to do. Okay, because if
A reusable bottle.
a reusable
Here is
bottle,
one.
Yes, and we use reusable
Yes.
bottle.
Yeah.
Very
I've been
good.
trying.
Yes.
And cups.
and cups.
Yes, and I have it in my office as well. And when I go to the water fountain or where you get the
Yes.
water, I
Fill it up.
I fill my water in that, and that cuts down basically a lot of use of plastic
Plastic
cups.
bottles and cups.
Yes.
A lot of plastic cups that are there.
So those
Some
are the
places,
little things
yes,
you can do.
and there are some places that I would have seen not plastic cups, but they have these little
Paper bowls.
paper
Yes.
hole, and that is really sustainable
Yes.
Yes.
in a certain
Yes.
sense and so on. But it is
It's a serious problem.
It's a serious problem.
where we have to examine our behaviors. So, in doing so, because when I got to the ministry, they said, well, we do this. Sustainable Destination Council has done their bit. Some of the supermarkets are doing it. And one thing I have to tell you that I observe, some of the tourists who come here, they are more aware and they're practicing these things. They're not walking up and down with bottles. They walk up and down with bottles like this, or glass bottles, you know. But the thing is, I think we have to ask ourselves, have we been really appealing to people's consciences? And that is why our theme now is, are we ready to be plastic free? Because when you flip it like that, when I ask you that question, tell me what comes to mind. Are we ready to be plastic free?
It means then we're not free. It's almost as though plastic has us enslaved.
Exactly. Yes. So it gets the mind thinking, maybe if we put it in that question format, it impacts the individual in a different way. You know, you
we can be liberated in some way.
Immediately you see you're a slave to this thing, to this plastic.
Yes.
So it's time to free ourselves of it. And are we ready? Meaning, are our minds ready? What is it we need to do?
I think, P.S. Rattan, that the connection has to be made with the environment. With our consumption of plastics, I do not think that that connection is made. It is to help people to see the impact that these single-use plastics is having on the environment.
And your health as well.
And on the environment, the environmental health, and human health, it is to see. And how do we make that connection? Because when I go to the supermarket and I buy, and I buy, and I buy, and they're giving me all of this plastic and all of this plastic and all of this plastic, maybe if I had to pay for it,
You wouldn't get the plastic.
I wouldn't get the plastic.
Very good.
And in fact, in some places,
you have to pay for
like
it.
in London and so on, I see my aunt, of course, when we would go to the supermarket, you know, she would walk with her bag.
Yes. Because they have to pay for a plastic
Because
bag.
you have to pay for the plastic bag.
Yes.
We don't have to pay for it here. It's free. And of course, when anything is free, we say take 2 and take 3. And sometimes they double the bag and they triple the bag and so on because it's free.
Yes.
But with the accumulation of that plastic now, and the disposal of it, we're disposing of more and it's ending up where it should not end up.
Yes.
The consumer needs to make that connection between the accumulation of plastic, the improper disposal of plastic, and what it is doing to their health and the health of the environment. I think that is where we have to clinch it.
Yes.
Yes.
And we have been taking steps. Also, if you go to our SEC page, there's a video at the end that depicts the process a bottle was thrown away, but passed through the entire environment, the dangers that potentially could cause from the amount that was shared into the ocean. In fact, there was a float in the Pelican Mall recently, we moved now, that depicted that same image that we had during Carnival, where you had one side the plastic monster. On the flip side, if you actually get the plastic, you see how beautiful landscape, rivers, sunshine, and all that. So the message has been, we have been trying to put the message out there. But as I said, sometimes perhaps people need to
Pay closer
attention to what's we're trying to do. I said, we don't do it just for the sake of doing it. We have a purpose behind it.
Yes. I think that brings out the, perhaps we have to use more imagery.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
And how that connects also in the schools. Because they kind of, very often teachers say they don't have resources. They have a lot of resources. Some of them may be upset when I say this. You do have a lot of resources. Because the video you see, you can take that to your classroom and that is the focus.
You know, P.S. Rattan, there's a difference between having resources and being resourceful.
Well, I know that. But maybe
You
we
know,
need to
but
promote
maybe
more
some people are not being resourceful.
Yes,
the
because
resources are there, but they're not
yes.
being resourceful.
We have a lot of resources. I even in coming here, I discussed with Les Roy because I found a video. I shared it with
Yes.
my staff too. The video with the social activism of our artists in the Caribbean. There's a song, you know, that Claudette Peters, Ricardo Drew, you know, Skinny Fabulous, all of them came together to sing about plastics and how we dispose of our garbage. And that is commendable. But are we using them? Are we using them to promote,
I know.
you know, that positive social activism? And so one of the things I can say it here, we're going to bring on board, look out for it. We want to stimulate the creative juices of our graphic artists or creative people, and we want to do a mascot competition. So stay tuned for that, because we want a larger than life,
Yes.
a larger than life imprint in people's minds about plastic. Because imagery is very impactful and it impacts us all the time, but we have to now use it again.
Okay, so while we talk about the plastics and banning single-use plastics, what do we mean by single-use plastics, by the way, so that people...
Okay, well, single-use plastics are plastics that were made with the intention of a one-time use. Because we've gotten this question, of course, over and over again, and persons say, well, shopping bags, grocery bags are not single-use because I use it for my garbage, I use it for other things. But what you use it for after does not redefine the purpose. Okay, so single-use plastics, like I said, it's defined as plastics that were made for one-time use, like your plastic shopping bags, your straws, even your plastic bottles. They're all single-use plastics.
Because the intention is that you dispose of
You
it
dispose
after.
of it after.
Like,
your
for
one-time
example,
use.
a bottle of water.
Correct.
You don't use it after that. You
No.
just throw it away.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And the cottage industry, we've had also that increase that came to mind. You know, the persons who are selling the little passion fruit drink, lemonade and so, they're buying more plastics to put these drinks in.
Yeah.
They're buying more
It's a
plastics.
major concern.
That's
Put these
also
drinks
a
in.
concern.
That's a concern. And then, yes, we want local production. We want the local produce. But then they'll tell you, well, if we buy glass bottles, we won't people won't be in a position to afford to buy it.
Yeah.
Because glass bottles are more expensive. So these are some of the issues we
Yeah.
have to raise with the Ministry of
And then
Finance.
what we do see as well, if you go to functions, for example, most local products, local drinks, brewery,
Yeah.
and so on, they're in bottles.
Glass.
They're in glass bottles. And they pour those, take from glass into
And
the
put
plastic
into the plastic.
into the plastic cups. And there's a reason for that, of course, because
They're
know
reusable.
they're reusable, and not only that, you save your bottles. People don't go away with the bottles. You have your bottles, and also for safety, because the bottles can be used for violence and all of that sort of a thing. So it is to cut down on that risk.
You see that? But we're
To have
using plastic.
to have a safer environment, you don't want people walking away with the bottles.
Yes.
Especially, where people can be intoxicated and
Yes.
you can have fights taking place and all, and then they use the plastics.
Which has a more long-term impact.
Which have a more long-term impact. Now, in such a case, with a ban on single-use plastics, what will they use?
Well,
And that's why I want to come to the alternative. What are some of the alternatives to plastic?
Okay. Well, I know for us as SCC, we have partnered, that was before I was actually in the Ministry of Things, perfect, that was the inception. Where we gave them cups with a little slogan on the front. Somebody actually glowed in the dark. When you throw in the beverage, the color would change. And people kept them as souvenirs after the function. You could take them back over and over that night or even to another function. So it's just about the mindset of using them over again. I think it was even one model where you could actually clip the cup onto your waist. So if you're not drinking, you can walk on with your cup. You don't have to hold it in your hand. You can dance as much as you want. So there are alternatives. But again, it's just for the culture of us to
Change.
change and utilize them.
Let's go to the phone lines because I start receiving calls
Wow.
already. So the numbers to call are the phone numbers to call 465 25 55. That is one number. 465 25 55. That's the local number. Working for you. Good afternoon. Hello?
Have we lost the caller?
We seem to have lost that caller. But let us go. Alternatives.
Okay, there are many alternatives on the market right now. For instance, plastic straws.
Yes.
We've seen there are now paper plastic straws, and there are also stainless steel plastic straws.
The person is back. Working for you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon.
This is Dumpling.
Dumpling, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm enjoying the program.
Okay.
Mr. Williams, when I was much younger and I used to go shop, I used to go with like a little towel, where the shopkeeper put in the bread and they wrap it up, and then you take it back home. I never, plastic. And if I go to the shop to buy grocery or whatever, they used to put them in some brown paper bag.
Yes.
You understand? And when my mother go to the big shopping for the small shop then, they will ask for a box. And the packing, the little sardine, the beef, the rice, it never used to be no load of plastic.
Right.
You understand? And then when I start to go high school now, I get a flower bag and I carry it by Miss Dublin and this my another mother, Miss, I forget what she title name, teacher Miss Osborne. And she make a nice little, I tell her I want a bread bag make. And she put on top of it. This is Dumpling bread bag for her bread every morning. So I used the children used to tease me and all. So I used to tell my bread bag every morning and every Sunday I wash it because for the Monday morning to collect my bread. This load of plastic, sometimes you're going to see water plastic or tie up your foot and all them kind of things. So I would like them to go back to the basics because if the paper bag bought, you throw it in the garbage can. You understand? We never used to have plastic bags to throw in the garbage. They have like a drum, and the government has the drum, the map, PhD. So you throw in your garbage in it, and the can come and empty. So I would like them to go back to them long-time things,
Right, Dumpling.
Maybe 2 pence.
Yes, Dumpling, your 2 pence was much more than 2 pence. It was $1 million. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
That input, Dumpling. Very, 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 very good. Yeah. So we are dealing with the alternatives.
Yes, the alternatives.
We're talking about straws.
Yes, I mentioned there are paper straws, and there are many businesses in St. Kitts and Nevis that have already started using the paper straws. And along with the paper straws, you can have your stainless steel straws. There's stainless steel straws that persons carry around with them in their bags, and all you can do is just wash out your straw after every use, and then you carry it again. So in this way, you can avoid taking a straw when you go out. For a while now, we've been seeing the reusable shopping bags. In particularly, Rams and ValueMart for a number of years have brought these bags on board for persons to use. So that is also an alternative. We are now seeing alternatives to plastic cups. More persons are using the paper cups, and also the biodegradable plastic utensils. I think there are some that will be able to be decomposed within, say, 30 days or something like that. So these are just a few alternatives that are on the market, but of course they are significantly higher than the plastics. But as the PS mentioned, this is something that we have to have a discussion with the Ministry of Finance with, because we want to make the duty a little less so that persons will even consider bringing them in as alternatives.
Right, so we are looking at material that is biodegradable,
Yes.
basically. Now, Miss Woods, plastic is very durable. And that is one of the things. It is not biodegradable, if I want to say. What's the difference between photo degradation and biodegradation?
Well, biodegradation is basically the breakdown of plastics. Most of the times you would say that plastics are not biodegradable, but this isn't entirely true, but we say this because it takes such a long time to biodegrade. So for instance, up to 100 years plastics can take to break down. So we say that they won't break down within our lifetime. So we class it as non-biodegradable, but it actually does biodegrade, but it's so many years. And well, actually, like I mentioned, so there are no plastics that can break down within a number of plastics, as we call it, that because these plastics are made from, say, cornstarch, they're made from sugar cane, they're made from a lot of other things that could replace these chemicals that would cause the plastics to break down much easily than these other toxins that are usually put into the traditional plastics.
Now, you mentioned earlier about heat on plastic. Now, does the sun, the ultraviolet rays from the sun and so on, does that actually break down plastic as well?
Yes, of course, because UV rays even attack human beings. They actually break down cells in human beings. Okay, so yes, these plastics are broken down by the sun as well, and not only the sun but other the environmental elements help to break down these plastics as well. So once heat gets to plastic, that causes the breakdown process. But traditional plastics, they won't break down as easily.
Right.
When they're heated, you just release toxins. So this breakdown will happen over a long period
So
of
we
time.
can almost say they're indestructible.
Yes. That's why plastics are very durable. That's why persons tend to lean more towards plastics. That's why plastics have become such a major part of our lives.
Right. Now, our phone lines are open for those of you who are just joining us. And the numbers to call are 465-2555. That's the local number. And our overseas number is 1-718-577-2916. That's the overseas number, 1-718-577-2916. And we're having a very important and very lively discussion on the ban of single-use plastics. Your calls are welcome. Right, so I'm still interested to know. For example, when we have these big events like the music festival and the Latin festival and White
Carnival.
Sands and Carnival and so on, because we tend to use a lot more plastic around those
times,
at those times. I mean, we use a lot of plastic in general, but we use a lot of plastic in terms of plastic cups and all of that sort of a thing. So the heightened use of plastic comes around certain events and festivals that we have. And plastic is light, and as you said, it is durable and all of that sort of a thing. What are we going to do for the music festival? Tell them to walk with their cups? Because I mean, and you can see the effect, of course, because after these big events, you look at the field
Oh my God.
where it was held. You see all this plastic, a sea
It's like a sea.
of plastic, and that is not even a tiny, tiny fragment of what gets into the ocean and so on. What will we do?
Well, we can pilot certain things. I think
We have another caller. Working for you, good afternoon.
Mr. Williams, Morgan.
Yes,
When was the
Dumpling.
music festival and Christmas? They could go back to basic and use the paper cup. They used to use paper cups by the bad. When you come and you buy your drink, you get in a paper cup.
They do have paper cups.
Yes, you need to go back to the most we had the plastic cup. I mean, the paper cups, when you bend them up, they just go in the plastic cup to open that up.
That is true, you know. We used to have paper cups.
Yes.
Yes,
Back
and
to
the-
basics, Dumpling. I agree with you.
Yes, Miss Ratman, you know that.
Yes, I know that.
You know that because when you come to Mexico, Alice, you see them got the radio.
Yes.
Radio, I see no more in the Stanley cup. We didn't paper bag, it's go away with it.
Yes.
Man is in a paper bag,
Yes.
not a plastic bag. Go back to basic.
Yes. Okay, Dumpling, thank you. So many things we really have to go back to basics. We've become so, even though we use that word, we are so sophisticated.
Sophisticated now. Everything is very easy.
And really and truly, sophisticated is not really such a good word, you know, when you have to look at the root of the word. But anyway, because it really comes from, you know, those people that they call the sophists. And
Yes.
sophists were people who, in the philosophy and so on, they were
Yes.
just, you know, but we
But
have
you
to,
see, let's find this is on our discussion as we engage more. It really is a behavior change, so we have to really get creative as how we appeal to people's consciences about these decisions. And you really have to start with yourself. One experience I had, my microwave broke about 5 years ago. Okay, I decided I'm not buying any new microwave because I was concerned about this thing, you know. And I started now. I bring my lunch in a glass container now. I warm in the microwave now, but at work. But I bring it in a glass container. But when I'm at home, I go the whole time with to warm up.
right.
My
You
daughter
heat
says,
it on the stove.
"Yeah, mommy, you need to get a microwave." I said, "I'm not getting another microwave. I've decided I'm not getting another microwave."
And that's a principle
And-
stand.
She thinks I'm crazy, and other people think I'm crazy, you know. But you have to start somewhere. And you have to start with yourself. Just like
do.
I'm trying with to walk with my shopping bags more.
Yes. You have to start somewhere.
And I think that's one of the things we try and promote. Because also one of our main stakeholders is actually the government. So we're hoping the government offices would take up the role and start using more reusable stuff. Biodegradable stuff in the offices, and when you have
Yes.
meetings and stuff like that.
Yes.
That's one of the hopeful outcomes of the Plastic Be Gone campaign that we're working with the environment and
Yes. And what we did at our first focus group consultation, we gave them a bag, a shopping bag, and a bottle.
Yeah.
And the snacks were just fruit, and we had it on a plateau, not plastic, not individually wrapped.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we had paper plates, and we had all water in a cooler, so you fill your bottle
Right.
rather than bring any plastic cups. So we are trying.
Yeah.
You know, even in the little focus group consultations, we are trying to promote those practices.
Yeah, and the effort, you know, the trying is so important because it is a very important issue
Yes.
that basically has to be addressed. And probably we don't see it as important sometimes, and the whole thing why we're having programs like this and you're having meetings with stakeholders and so on is to impress upon them the importance of seeing how single-use plastics and the plastic pollution is affecting all of us
Yes.
in a big way.
Yeah.
You know, in our society today, we have more and more people coming down with cancers and
Yes.
all of this sort of a thing.
Yeah.
And who knows? That might just be one of the reasons. Because of the toxins and so on that is coming from and our over-reliance on the use of plastics and so on. We just don't know. So we have to get rid of that the health threat when it comes to the thing and the environmental threat, you know, to our marine life and
To the
all.
soil,
Yeah,
the food.
and not only that, to birds as well. Tell us a little bit, VC, about that, because birds as well
Well,
ingest plastic.
yes, and all these species they mistake pieces of plastics for food, and of course this not only affects the individual the individual animal or
Yes.
whatever, it eventually messes with the entire ecosystem. So plastics are also a threat to the ecosystem, and we all know how the ecosystem. Well, most of us know how the ecosystem works.
When one area is affected, it's all
yes.
affected.
So in order for us to have a healthy ecosystem, each individual species must operate in its niche. Okay, so if one species is affected, and a lot of times we see these species affected by plastic, they think it's food. Sometimes they even get tangled in the plastics, and this is detrimental to the species as well, to the ecosystem as well. So this is something that we need to be mindful of. It's not just about the aesthetics of it. It's for a healthy environment. We need a healthy ecosystem, and plastics is one of the threats to an healthy environment and the healthy ecosystem.
Right. Now, P.S. Rattan, there are some other countries within the Caribbean that have already implemented a ban on single-use plastics. Could you name some of those countries, and have you been in dialogue with some of those countries to basically to see how that has been working? The Ministry of Environment and so on, to look at their, how they went about it, the best practices, and so on.
Yes, so some people say, oh, we are last, but we are going to grab every opportunity to implement a ban that is best fit for our context. Some countries went ahead very quickly and they experienced problems. Some did well. Antigua was one. I think Antigua was one. There were between 2015 and 2016, the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, almost all St. Lucia, almost all the other Caribbean islands have that banner. But one of the things, we have decided that we'll take some of the lessons learned, so that would inform how we do it.
Yes.
Some admit that they made mistakes. Some have advised that 5 years is too long. We are looking at that. It is very long, because we can make some incremental steps. And our minister has been in touch with some of his colleague ministers who have committed to giving some guidance from us. So we are looking forward to do that exchange of best practice, exchange of lessons learned, so that it can guide us here.
Okay. Now, Ms. Woods, while we can speak about the plastic that moves from the land and gets into our waterways, the oceans, and so on, is there anything being done to clean up the ocean?
Well,
for the plastic that is already in the ocean?
Yes, I know this is something that the Department of Marine Resources, this is something that they do regularly. They do they've even partnered with us over the last couple of years with our annual cleanup.
Yes.
While we clean the beaches, they have done their part doing the underwater cleanup. So because they have certified divers, they've taken part in this initiative to clean up the coastal reefs and whatnot. And this is something that is done regularly by them.
Okay. Now, in a 2006 report called Plastic Debris in the World's Oceans, Greenpeace, Greenpeace stated that at least 267 different species are known to have suffered from entanglement and ingestion of plastic debris. The National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration said that plastic debris kills an estimated 100,000 marine mammals annually, millions of birds and fishes.
That's a staggering realization for us. And I'm sure that was 2006. I'm sure
that's in 2006.
Yes.
And we are in 2021. And we are told that every year plastic production is increasing. So can you imagine from 2006 when we had that sort of a destruction up until now? So therefore there has been an increase.
Of course.
And if we don't stop dumping our plastics and so on our beaches, and they end up in our oceans and that sort of a thing, what is basically going to happen?
Exactly. Well,
And it's not only fish, because we can speak about larger sea creatures such as seals, sea lions. We don't have
Yes.
those. Dolphins, sea turtles, sharks. Well, we saw some fish sharks the other day. They were coming, in
I think
their
in
droves.
when they found one of them, when they cut it down, they found plastic.
There was plastic
in
inside.
one,
There was plastic inside.
One of them.
Crocodiles and seabirds and crabs and other creatures. The plastic is really affecting them.
Regarding the beaches, so I think one of the things we have to wrap our minds around, because I go to the beach quite often, are we invested in appealing signage? And I see a lack of bins on the beaches. I also see that. So appealing ones, I notice I use the word appealing. Because in many countries internationally, the signage to me does a lot. It means a lot. It impacts you a lot.
Of course.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
It impacts you a lot. And are we investing in that kind of signage?
Yeah, but
Not
that-
just a little sign, you know?
Yeah, but that is something that the
have to
Ministry
look
of
at.
Environment
That's what I'm saying.
has to propose.
Yes.
For example, on the beaches and so on,
Yes.
we need to put up signage. Please do not leave your
Yes.
garbage here.
And even bins, you know?
And bins and so on.
yes.
You know, when I was in Jamaica, you know, we have a way of urinating everywhere, men pulling out and urinating. So and some places I went to in Jamaica, you know, they don't use the nice language. You know, they say don't piss ya.
Well, that's effective communication, isn't it?
Effective communication. Sometimes our signs are very polite and so on. You know.
Context.
Yeah, but we need to jump. You need to grab people.
Yes. We have to
You
use
know,
the dialect.
Yes, sometimes we have to use the dialect and to let people know how their behavior is impacting the environment.
Yes.
You know, because eventually, you know what is going to happen? It is that very same environment that impacts us.
Exactly.
So there is a relationship that we have with the environment. If I don't treat the environment well, the environment will not treat me well.
Of course.
The environment is at the center of everything.
The environment is at the center of everything,
Our
and
being,
sometimes
our being.
and sometimes the environment is angry from the way that it's being treated. And when it is angry, it unleashes its fury on us. Am I correct, Ms. Wood?
Very correct. Very correct. Because when you look at the more powerful storms, you know, I recall growing up, Hurricane David. Hurricane David was just what we call Category 1. We thought it was such a big deal, you know, and then now I've grown to experience hurricanes of Category 4 and 5, you know, and it is attributed to climate changes in the climate, you know. And so it comes back at us, as I say, in all its glory and fury.
In all its glory.
And fury.
Now, how has Miss Woods? I keep going to you. How has the
She's the expert.
the marine litter? How has it impacted economics?
The marine litter?
Yes.
Well, from my knowledge, marine litter can damage coral reefs, and if for those of you who don't know, the coral reefs are basically a feeding ground for many different species, not only fish, all different types of marine species. So if these coral reefs are broken and coral reefs get damaged all the time, this will impact the amount of species that come here to come to the coral reefs to feed. So it will definitely have an impact on the economics of fishing, because then we have less fish in our seas to catch and supply
Yes.
persons with food.
Mm-hmm. Right. So it is basically affecting livelihood.
Yes,
It's
it is
affecting
affecting
livelihoods
livelihoods
as well, yes.
and that's the fishermen have to go different places,
Yeah.
so they have to venture out further. I
That
guess,
is correct.
To new grounds. To
Right,
catch
because
fish.
there's lost catch and all of that sort of a thing. And sometimes when you have all of these plastics and so on, you can have damaged nets as well.
Yes.
The nets can be damaged
Yes.
and other fishing gear.
Yes.
Hmm? and things like that.
But you know, I don't think we have.
Fish farming is also affected.
Yes.
Mhm.
I
And
don't think.
coastal agriculture,
Yes.
coastal agriculture, because there's some agriculture along the coast, and if you're going to have pollution and things like that, it's
Yes.
going to affect coastal agriculture.
Yeah.
I was saying, I wonder if we have an appreciation of the amount of litter we have, because I know someone who is doing a master's right now, and he has focused on beaches that we don't regularly go to clean. And so we were having a discussion, and he said, look, what's the name of that beach? Majors Bay.
Oh,
Oh, that has so much litter. He said, you don't, because he goes regularly and weighs with whatever study he's doing. He has to wait. And he said, that is one of the dirtiest beaches, Majors Bay,
Yeah.
based on his findings thus far.
Yeah, we think of coastal communities and how they basically are affected, because you have to have money to all do all these beach cleanups.
Yes.
For example, public health becomes a problem,
Yes.
and so on. And our mainstay in terms of the economy is tourism. What does that do if we have a lot of this plastic pollution on our beaches? Bad publicity.
Yes.
of course.
What will tourists say?
Exactly. And some of them
They
are
will
very
go back,
conscious.
very conscious. They will go back and say, but
Environmentally.
those beaches are so dirty. Those beaches are so filthy. There's so much debris. There's so much plastic. There's so much this and so on. And they basically wouldn't want to come. And so what would happen? We will
Yes.
lose income.
Yes.
We would lose income because of the bad publicity that we will get because of our nasty behavior.
You see how many things it affects? Every aspect of livelihood.
It affects every aspect of livelihood. Every aspect. You know. Now, I want to hear more about the implementation of the ban on single-use plastics in St. Kitts. What is the plan of action?
Okay, well, as DPS mentioned, we are taking this in a phased approach. Okay, so we are currently in the first phase. And what we are doing now is basically engagement and consultations. So over the past maybe 2, maybe 3 weeks, we have been engaging one-on-one with some stakeholders, mainly some of the supermarkets. And we've also had a stakeholder engagement, which was the focus group that DPS referred to some time ago. So at these engagements, we are basically letting the stakeholders know these are our plans, but most importantly, we want insight from the stakeholders. We want their major concerns, and we especially want their suggestions, because many of them have come up with suggestions as a way to have this plan rolled out more smoothly. Okay, they also have major concerns. Most of them are concerns about, bringing in the plastic alternatives and the cost and the duties and so forth. So these are just some things that we want to hear back from the stakeholders. Our consultations continue this week and into next week and in the upcoming weeks as well. So these have been going good. We've had some pretty good feedback, and all of them have welcomed us, because a lot of them surprisingly are saying, it's about time. This is something that we should be doing. It should have been done before, and we are ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
And-
And we are going to Nevis with the
Yes,
consultations.
we also have intentions of going over to Nevis to have consultations with them over there, because we all know that Nevis has been doing some work as well
Yes.
with regards to the plastics, the ban on plastics. So we are going over to Nevis also to engage them and see what way that we can, because this is just going to be a federal decision. So we need to involve them as well and just have them tell us like what their plans are, what they've been doing thus far. So for this reason, we find it necessary that we need to go over to Nevis and engage with them and invite them so we can do this as a collaborative effort.
But you know what? The minister with responsibility for the environment, the Honorable Eric Evelyn, is a Nivision.
Yes,
Yes.
he is.
But of course, he is a part of this We're all one people.
Yes.
Divisions and petitions, and so therefore it's a federal initiative.
Yes, it is.
It's a federal initiative, and he has been extremely passionate.
Yes, he is.
I mean, I you know, you couldn't find a minister who was more passionate than he is, you know, in terms of what he's doing. He's very good. The Sustainable Destination Council, Kenny.
Yes.
How are you supporting the implementation of the ban?
As I saying, with regards to us supporting, we actually have a campaign, Plastic Gone campaign, which is integrating with what they are doing. As a dovetail. Because a major part of the Plastic campaign is consultation, where we don't want to just give generalized information anymore. We want to be specific. So with the help of the consultation, they'll be able to feed us the data, the
Yes.
opinions, so we have more targeted approach towards our communication to the various stakeholders at the various levels. In fact, for the Plastic Gone campaign, you guys will be a member of the panel discussion that's coming up, so they'll be able to give us some input on the spot. And also, we have several activities like the Plasticade and other big cleanups where we want to incorporate, again, what they have grasped, and then going forward, we don't want to start plastic for July, which sometimes
Sure.
happens. We see a year-long thing that's going to continue throughout the years. We actually have plans to go into the schools, but due to time and also the issue with COVID and the regulations and so on, that have to be put on pause.
Yes.
But hopefully going forward, that will be a major achievement that we get. The schools, as you know, the children tend to absorb things a bit faster than the adults.
Yes. Right.
Yes.
But you
Right.
see, when it comes to the schools, though, having lived in the garden of education,
Yes.
we really need a some sort of unified approach in
Yes.
going to the schools, because generally teachers tend to see this as separate to what the children are learning, and it
Yes.
is not separate. It is
No,
at the
it's not.
center. I know the curriculum has a lot of room for integration of what is happening.
Yes.
Even though they're going through revision, it is there.
Yeah.
But we need to help them along. And one of the things, we have reached out to the curriculum development unit, and we hope to establish that relationship, because sometimes you have to bring that drive from outside
Yeah.
to help the teachers. Okay? And some schools are eco-friendly.
Yeah.
They have, and so we are trying to start with those eco-friendly schools first.
Yes.
Okay? Because it becomes a way of life.
Yeah.
Not just something blocked into the four walls of the classroom, and that is what.
And that's
we
also why
want
we're
to
trying
see.
for our Tools in the Classroom program.
Yes.
We are trying to integrate sustainable
Integrate it
practices
there.
into that thing. And we hope,
Yeah.
I think the plans are to expand it, but again, because of COVID, things are slowed down.
Yes.
You know, one of the things as well that we haven't touched, but sewage ends up in
the
our
sea.
oceans as well. And the sewage, basically, the sewage has in it sometimes plastic,
Yeah.
you know, and that too is poisoning our ocean, poisoning marine life. So proper disposal of sewage. Some people have their sewage going into the ocean.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
But
It-
the
it's-
environment department tests water quality.
Mhm.
They
We
test
test
water
water
quality to
quality.
monitor that.
Yeah.
Yes, at recreational beaches. So there are a number of chemicals and pollutants that we look for in this recreational beach water.
Right, and then of course we have the fishing related debris that ends up in the ocean as well.
Yeah.
You have the dumping from ships, the waste from ships, and boats, and you know sometimes their nets end up in the ocean, and these nets entangle the marine life and cause them to suffocate also. So people who are livelihood is based on the ocean, they too have to be conscious of that.
Yes.
I think
And
DMR
safety practices.
The safety
DMR
has
does
been
some
doing
work
stuff
with that.
along the lines.
These are safety practices. But one of the things this program has brought out is that we have a consensus that of course change in behavior.
Yes.
Behavioral changes are important, and that they must not start when we're adults.
Yeah.
It must start now with our
And with
younger people,
And with ourselves.
with ourselves. But we have to start with our younger people, and it has to be implemented at all levels.
Yes.
We said, which is the individual level, which you
Yes.
stressed on, the governmental, the legislative, the industrial, technological, educational, philosophical, because there has to be that whole philosophy, national and international. So we agree, and it has to be education, legislation, and awareness.
Yes.
You know, those things definitely must be there. But what can you tell me about the Plasticade, Kenny?
Oh. Plastic Aid last year, it was mostly done partly virtually, because of course we couldn't have, usually have a march and all that, but we couldn't have that many people with us this year.
Yes.
So we went around distributing usable items and stuff along that lines, and we had a drone shot taking live feed on Facebook and I think YouTube as well. Yeah. Well, this year we want to do something along the line, but something a bit more intimate, where we get a chance to really interact with people and get to talk to them, and stress the need to give up their plastic bags, the single-use bags, and other items for something. So we're planning to go around the island again. We're going to have specific stops. We found the general public. Let's say 10 o'clock we're going to be here at Greenlands pasture. You can come bring your your single-use bags, single bottles. In exchange, we have a conversation, and then we give a reusable bag or a reusable cup, so that they can see the alternatives that are available. And now you don't have an excuse. You don't have a bag anymore. It was given to you. You gave something for something, and that's what we're trying to put that in people's minds as well. It's not just a one-off thing. It has to be something that's continuous.
Yes.
Where you give up something in exchange for something better. So that's what we're trying to do this year. We won't have it's not going to be as loud and as boisterous as it was last year. We're hoping to have a greater impact.
Okay. Right, and I think we need to tap into certain events. I mentioned them before, and we must have a message of reducing plastic use. Carnival, music festival, restaurant week.
Everything.
Already incorporates.
They have already incorporated that. Yeah,
That's
and
why
Latin
we want
festival.
to do the larger than life mascots. We are going to be working on getting that competition, so somebody will have the opportunity to design,
Right.
and design and create some larger than life thing which would become permanent or permanent
Yes, we
fixture.
right. We are out of time actually,
Yes.
but you have to use a lot of to get people to be aware.
Yeah.
Maybe social media.
Yes.
Social media. I know that the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, they wrote to me recently, and they have actually launched this campaign about the dangers of single-use plastic and plastic pollution.
I saw the video.
And they have a series of videos, some of them are 1-minute videos and so on, that they have been sending to us as a government agency so that we can promote to them. I've written to ZIZ and also to wanting them to go on TV, but of course, that will come with a cost.
You can share them with us. We get some, but I don't recall getting those. So you can share them with us on our page.
I
so
will
that we
share
can
them with the
share
Ministry of
them.
Environment so that you can share, and tourism as
Yes,
well,
and tourism.
so that you can share them.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is something. Now, part of the future, of course, because we are looking for alternatives that are more sustainable,
Yes.
right? And not just alternatives, but more sustainable alternatives, because the whole thing is about sustainability. Now, one of the things is that they've also spoken about biodegradable plastics, because while there are some plastics that are non-biodegradable, there are some plastics that are biodegradable, and when they break down to carbon dioxide and water. Woods, what do you have to say about it? Has that been a consideration for us to get biodegradable plastics as part of the alternative?
Well, yes, that has been a consideration. As a matter of fact, one such supermarket like I think it's OD Brisbane, they do have the biodegradable utensils as well as the plastic bags. Which, when we went to have an engagement with them, they were happy to show us these that they have brought in.
Yes.
And we have to commend them because this is an initiative that they took upon themselves to do without any legislation or anything like that.
Right.
So yes, we want, but their major concern, of course, again was the cost of duty. But they felt that it was it was their duty to do something like this, to bring in, to offer, at least have it available for the consumer in the event that they prefer over the much cheaper plastics.
Right. And also, we are talking about a green world and all of that sort of a thing. And we are talking in terms of using more renewable energy and all of that, the wind and the sunlight and geothermal and all of that sort of a thing. But on the other hand, plastics are made from petroleum. And so therefore, if we cut down on the production of plastics, we're also cutting down on the greenhouse emissions and all of that sort of a thing. So we are creating a greener world. Would you agree with me?
Of course.
Yes. And the very fact as well that we are using so much petroleum to produce millions of metric tons of plastic. That also means that some of that petroleum and so on could be going into other things as well.
Yes.
You see? So those are basically some, and we have to think in terms of recycling, and we have to think in terms of a zero waste concept. We have to have a zero waste concept in this country.
Yes.
I know in certain countries, I've never been there, but I've heard about it in Canada and places like that. They have very stiff fines for littering and so on. And, and I used to hear my grandmother, God bless her soul, she's dead now, but she went to Canada, and one of the first things she said to me when she came back, she couldn't believe how clean the environment was. She said it's almost as though, she said actually to me, it's like you can eat off the street, off of the road. And we have to have that zero waste concept. I know that Jam Down, Manners, he calls in all of this, and he's very, very offended. When we throw our plastics and all of that in the drains, you go around town and all of that sort of it, it creates another problem because then the water cannot move and it creates flooding.
Not only that, mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes and flooding and rats and all kinds of things and so on. So it's we have to stop it.
Yes, we do.
And that is why it is so important that we have this ban on single-use plastics.
So we look
extremely
forward
important.
for the general public support, their ideas. We are coming to you to ask what you think and help us to come up with a suitable solution for us.
Right. We're out of time. Anything you want to say before we go?
Participate.
Yes.
Yes.
Participate.
And everyone has to get on board.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, P.S. Rattan. Thank you, VC Woods. And thank you, Kenny. Kenny,
Thank you.
right. Thank you so much for being here and for discussing a topic so important.
Yes, you're most
and
welcome.
I hope that, the next time we come, that we'll be closer, basically, to some sort of legislation.
I am certain we will. Okay.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to Working For You, those of us who joined us via social media, via radio, and so on. We continue to appreciate your company from week to week. Thank you, Dumpling. You were the only caller we had today, but your contribution was extremely important. Tomorrow, of course, there's a rebroadcast of Working For You on Freedom Radio from 7:30 to 9, and on Vaughan Radio in Nevis from 10:30 to 12 p.m. And then we have the television of Working For You, which comes on Sunday night after the news, and then on Tuesday in the afternoon. Thank you so much. I am Les Roy Williams.